the summer of 2019 when my friend and I, both 13 at the time, were attending a camp that emphasized public speaking and gathering opinions from the community. One of our assignments was to conduct surveys at various locations, and our last stop of the day was at Walmart. The sun was setting, the sky painted with orange and purple streaks, casting a haunting glow over everything. We met a man, older, maybe in his 40s, who seemed perfectly harmless. He was eager to chat with us after answering our questions. He asked for our names and about ourselves, his eyes sharp, a little too interested in every detail. We were naive, oblivious to the danger of strangers, and willingly shared. He didn't seem strange, just curious, but when we got home that night, everything changed. An account, @Ed_Strapatsis, appeared in our friend requests on Facebook. He had liked old photos, left fire and rose emojis on our posts, then started commenting on how hot and sexy we were. At first we were confused, creeped out, sure, but we blocked the account and thought nothing more of it. Then it came again. This time the account came back under a different name, but it was clearly the same person. This man, Ed, started commenting on my baby pictures, calling me out for my pretty baby blonde hair and how cute I looked in short dresses. The comments were strange, unsettling. He crossed every line imaginable. By then we talked to our parents, but the cops? They just shrugged it off, telling us to take our accounts down, like that was a real solution for teens with no concept of the full weight of the situation. Time passed. We both thought it was over. It wasn't. In 2022 we got friend requests again, this time from what seemed like legitimate accounts, our friends' names and profile pictures. At first we added them thinking they were our friends just joining new accounts, but immediately we started seeing the same behavior. Likes, comments, messages, and yes, nude photos. The cycle repeated. Account after account, with stolen photos and names of friends, family, anyone we knew. The man just kept coming back. It was relentless. Then came the final straw. In June 2022, after a period of silence, I decided to accept one of these friend requests. It was from someone we both knew, someone we trusted. At first, there were no creepy comments, no inappropriate messages. It seemed safe. It seemed normal. But things got strange. I posted a photo of me and my friend at the park, and not 5 minutes later, a white truck parked eerily close to my car, its headlights glaring into my eyes. My friend and I stayed on the swings, trying to shake off the anxiety creeping into our bones, but we couldn't ignore the way the truck sat there, unmoving. The engine was off, the headlights still burning into us like a spotlight. For what felt like an eternity, we lingered, walking around the park in a half-panicked daze. When the truck finally left, we jumped into my car and sped off, but the unease stayed with us. Days passed, and every time I posted about going to the store, the same white truck would show up, hovering nearby like a shadow. It was only when I saw him, the man from Walmart, that the full horror hit. I knew something was terribly wrong. The final confrontation came when I was driving home after the camp's final day. The headlights of a white truck flashed in my rearview mirror, then started following me down winding back roads. At first I thought nothing of it, but then they started tailgating, honking, swerving dangerously close. They weren't just following, they were chasing. I drove faster, my heart thundering in my chest, and I made a sharp turn onto a narrow road. The truck was still behind me, trying to force me off the road. Panic surged as I swerved onto someone's yard, nearly wrecking the car. It was only when I reached a busy intersection that I managed to lose them. It didn't stop there. That night, my friend Anne, who had been driving her baby, had an almost identical experience. When she stopped at a gas station, the white truck pulled in behind her, blocked her in, and the man from Walmart, his eyes hollow, predatory, was there again. If Anne's brothers hadn't been outside, I don't think she would have made it out. Later, it came to light that the man we had been dealing with had accomplices. He had been stalking and harassing others in the area. The truck, the red car, the same man with his sick smile, it was all part of something more sinister than we had ever imagined. A few years ago, and I lived on the second floor of a crumbling apartment building that had seen better days. The peeling paint and flickering hallway lights only added to the feeling of unease that seemed to hang in the air like a thick fog. One night, I was binge-watching a show, the soft hum of the television mixing with the rhythmic tapping of the rain on the windows. I had left the curtains just slightly ajar, figuring no one could see inside. But around 1 a.m., a feeling, something primal, something gut-wrenching, pulled me from my comfort zone. I paused the show, glancing toward the window, and that's when I saw him. A man's face staring at me through the glass. His eyes were wide, too wide, unblinking. It was like he was waiting for something, like he knew I was watching him, and he wanted me to know he was watching me too. I froze, blood running cold in my veins. Then, in a flash, he vanished. The next morning, I reported it to the building manager, and that's when I learned the truth. Someone had been sneaking around the complex for weeks, watching, waiting. It wasn't the first time something like this had happened, but it was the first time it happened to me. I was 8, maybe 9 years old when it happened. My parents were out for the evening, and my older sister, who was in charge of babysitting me, had to deal with the chaos of a household left to her care. We were used to this. Our parents went out often, and my sister was more than capable of handling things. But this time it was different. I didn't know it at the time, but my parents had warned my sister about Grandma, my dad's mother. She had always been a bit unpredictable. The kind of woman who could switch from sweet as sugar to cold as ice in an instant. But tonight we were in for something darker. Around 10 p.m. we heard a knock at the door. My sister, ever the vigilant one, shushed me and motioned for us to stay quiet. But it didn't stop. Grandma's voice, soft at first, then louder, more demanding. "Robbie, I know you're in there. Open the door." We huddled together in the hallway, too scared to move as her pounding fists echoed through the house. The sound was relentless. Then there was a sudden silence. I thought maybe it was over. I was wrong. The next sound was the screeching wail of her voice, screaming like a banshee, shaking the house to its foundation. She was outside, pounding on every window, trying to get in. I could hear the fury in her words, words I didn't understand at the time but felt in my bones. This wasn't a woman. This was something else. Then the voice changed. It softened, sweetened, and suddenly she was trying to coax us into opening the door. She promised candy. She promised everything would be fine. But the shift in her voice made my skin crawl. I didn't know what she was anymore. When I thought it was over, when I thought we could relax, I heard the loudest, most horrible scratching noise on my bedroom window. I saw her silhouette in the moonlight, her face distorted in a way that shouldn't have been possible. It was like she was something else, something not quite human. The next day she was gone, dead from an infection that came swiftly and unexpectedly. But for me, she never truly left. I still hear her sometimes in the corners of my mind. For 3 years I worked with him, sat near him, collaborated with him, even shared laughs in the break room. It never crossed my mind that the man sitting next to me, the one I'd exchanged pleasantries with almost every day, could be hiding such a dark, sinister side. It was in September when everything changed. I walked into work to see a scene I'd never imagined. About 10 detectives were milling around the office, their expressions serious, tense. My heart dropped when I spotted him. My coworker, handcuffed, disheveled, and surrounded by officers who were going through his desk like they were looking for a body. He didn't seem surprised though. In fact, if anything, he looked relieved. I was stunned. The office felt suffocating, thick with the weight of something sinister. I approached one of the detectives and introduced myself, asking what was happening. He briefly explained the arrest, though he was careful not to give too much away, only saying that my coworker had been involved in something awful, something disturbing. I didn't press further. I had a sinking feeling that I wasn't going to like what I was about to learn. For the next 3 hours, I watched in silence as they dismantled his workspace, snapping evidence photos, taking notes, and searching his belongings. The tension was unbearable. The detectives called me in and out of rooms, asking me questions about my relationship with him. Had he ever said anything strange? Was he ever inappropriate? I told them he gave me an unsettling feeling, that I'd always had this nagging gut instinct that something wasn't right with him. I even told them something I hadn't really thought much about before that moment. I had told my husband more than once that if I ever went missing, my coworker would be the first person they'd suspect. I didn't know why I felt that way, didn't know how deep that feeling ran, until that very moment when I realized just how close I had come to becoming the victim of something horrifying. They told me they had served a search warrant at his home, and they were looking for evidence not just related to his arrest but for anything else, anything they might have missed. At that point, the police were looking for something bigger, something more dangerous. They asked for my name and my husband's name, and though I found it odd, I didn't question it. I called my husband to fill him in, updating him on the bizarre turn of events. But then came the final conversation, the one that still haunts me. About an hour later, I was called back into the room. The lead detective, who had barely made eye contact with me the whole day, now couldn't look at me at all. His face was pale, his eyes red-rimmed as if he'd been crying. The weight of his words felt heavier than any physical blow. He told me they had found something, and that something was a journal. The detective's voice cracked as he spoke, and I could see that whatever was in that journal had shaken him to his core. He told me my coworker had been journaling about me for over a year, his obsession with me. His writings weren't just about desire, they were about something far darker. He had a plan, a twisted, horrifying plan, that involved me, my husband, and the ultimate outcome of my death. In his journal, my coworker had written about wanting to be with me, but his problem was that I was married. And so, his twisted plan was born. He would frame my husband for cheating, destroy our lives, and eventually, once I was broken and vulnerable, he would kill me. The detective couldn't even bring himself to go into detail about the horrors that filled those pages. His voice shook with emotion, and I could tell that what he had read in that journal was more vile than anything he had ever encountered. It wasn't just the plan itself that had disturbed him, it was the sickening, methodical way my coworker had laid out every step. The detective was crying, a grown man brought to tears by the weight of what he had uncovered. And then, with a trembling voice, he told me to make sure I was safe. He wasn't sure whether my coworker would be booked that day or not, but he urged me to take precautions to make sure I had a plan just in case. I never thought something like this would happen to me, not in a million years. The man I had shared casual conversations with, the one I'd worked beside for so long, was a monster hiding in plain sight. Luckily, he was arrested and charged, and it seems he'll be spending a long time behind bars. But the fear, oh the fear, lingers. Every time I walk into work, I'm haunted by the thought of how close I came to being his victim. How easily my life could have been ripped apart by someone I trusted. It just goes to show you never really know who you're working with. Even the people closest to you can harbor the darkest of secrets. You want to hear more unsettling and true stories like this one? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Stay tuned for more spine-chilling tales that'll keep you up at night. And hit the bell so you never miss another terrifying experience.